Dr. Ken Druck is a best-selling author, executive coach and consultant, and internationally known thought leader who has helped countless individuals, families, organizations, and communities turning their greatest losses and challenges into opportunities for healing and becoming the better versions of themselves. So check this out. Recipient of the prestigious Distinguished Contribution to Psychology Award, Ken has inspired and guided clients, readers, audiences, and general public with his pioneering work in healing after loss, family psychology, civility, and aging over the past 45 years. Listen to this. His groundbreaking books, The Real Rules of Life, Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One, The Secrets Men Keep, Courageous Aging, Raising an Aging Parent, and How We Go On, have helped shape our worldviews on adversity and opened our hearts. Ken founded the Jenna Druck Center in 1996 to honor his daughter Jenna after her tragic death. The center's award-winning helping families, and young women's leadership programs provided free grief support to those who lost loved ones in 9/11, Sandy Hook, and Columbine, to mention a few, and trained over 18,000 girls to become leaders in their own lives and their communities. You understand why I want to read this. This is a life. Blows my mind. Ken speaks, conducts grief literacy trainings, classes, podcasts, and programs for audiences worldwide, including the United Nations, Harvard School of Public Health, Young Presidents Organization, and University of California, San Diego Medical School. His work is featured regularly on CNN, in PBS specials, top newspapers, and social media sites. Ken lives in Del Mar, California, where he maintains a coaching practice and consulting practice as a community leader. So I had to, because Ken is also much more than even just the bio to me. He happens to be the younger brother of my older brother's girlfriend that I grew up with in Rockville Center. So we actually are coming from the same town. And one day, through a mutual friend, when Ken heard Graceful Passages, he said, "Gary Malkin, is that like Stephen Malkin's brother from Rockville Center?" And this began our reconnection as passionate friends and brothers in a field that has deep complementarity and resonance. So you understand, I had to make you sit through that, Ken, because I really wanted people to understand the coup that it represents to have you here with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Good to be with you. And good to be completing that cycle and that circle. It's amazing that right in the aftermath of 9/11, as I was walking down into the pit where all the firefighters' fathers were searching for bits and pieces and signs of life and helping the families and kind of coordinating a lot of the grief response to 9/11, that you and I reconnected. That, knowing what your gift in the world, what you had already done, and listening to you tell me, Ken, what you've recorded is so intense, it needs music to soften and lubricate and to open people's hearts, because this is what's happened here is so unspeakably sad and horrific. And so there we were, sitting in a studio and not having seen each other for 40 years since we were little kids, and creating together my words, my stories, you picking up with every note the music, and creating, since here's a visual, creating Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One.
Yeah.
And so it's a joy to be with you many years later. as our work has deepened and broadened. And it's so good to be with. And I'm so grateful to you and Scott and everybody for sharing this room and this sacred space
already, right?
with people from all over the world.
You shook
And
this?
I'm so excited to.
Gotta be able to get this one off.
We need everybody to mute. Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Continue, Ken. Sorry.
No, we're all here. So if anybody's got anything to say, I welcome it. But
Well,
I'm grateful for, for the opportunity to meet people from all over, people who are part of the Global Peace Tribe. I can't imagine a more heartful space to be in tonight. So I'm delighted to be with you. And I hope to hear from people as well. I'm as interested in what you have to say as even more interested than what I have to say. And I welcome your questions or your added wisdom and sensitivities to this conversation.
well, Ken, I might even be able to find one of the tracks. We might want to play a little sample of it at some point. When you're speaking about something, maybe I'll go rummaging in my archive. I think I have a track that I could play, but you know, um, everybody wants to know about the creation story. It's like, to whatever degree can you share? I remember when I met you, it wasn't that long after the loss of Jenna, and everything was raw. And I remember what a courageous stand you were for not wanting to gloss anything over, and for you to like sit in the white hot heat of the experience of grief without any platitudes and, oh, you're going to she's better place. And I remember what a fierce defender you were of people's right to grieve as long and deep as they need to. And I'd love people to know a little bit of how you entered into this understanding that really was prescient for our time because of the amount of grief that everyone needs to have literacy around in order to just exist on this planet today. So take it.
Maya Angelou, one of my heroes, said that courage is the greatest virtue. It's embedded in every one of the other virtues. And the courage to me means facing in. And when you're grieving, whether you've suffered a life loss, and in my case, the death of my daughter, my beautiful 21-year-old daughter, who was in India on a study abroad program, on her way to the Taj Mahal when the bus she was on flipped over off the Grand Trunk Road. But whether you're grieving a life loss of somebody, a loved one, or a living loss, where you are grieving the loss of your health, your future as you knew it, your marriage, a job, a career, a path that you loved, a friendship that ended in a betrayal or transgression, whatever kind of loss you might be experiencing, that it takes tremendous courage just to show up. Even I could even say the people who've tuned in today are doing so courageously to face into, because there's no way around or under, or I'm getting over it, or there's only through it. There's only summoning, as we all have done so many times in our lives, summoning newfound courage, understanding, kindness, patience, because at the center of all grief and healing after loss has to be self-compassion. The last couple of years, I've adopted a slogan: take your foot off of your throat and put your hand on your heart. We are all so harshly self-critical, judgmental, putting ourselves in a box, so condemning. It's almost like we're in a courtroom with only a prosecuting attorney with that admonishing finger in our face, producing evidence, prosecuting us, convicting us. There's no defense attorney to say, Your Honor, that's ridiculous, I object, or a judge to say, you're going to get thrown out of court, you're in contempt of court, or a jury to say, my God, There's no guilt here. So moving our foot from our throat with all the things that we say to ourselves after suffering a loss, moving it down to our heart and showing ourselves every kindness, every measure of patience and understanding and support, encouragement and faith is a divine gesture, is the secret sauce to how we go on. And for me, Gary, when you talk about, what I did, I was in inescapable, choiceless moments of sorrow. That sorrow needed a voice. My objection, what do people go through when they've suffered a traumatic loss? It's like, what? Get the casting director on the phone. Who the hell, how does all this work? How could something like this happen? How could my beautiful 21-year-old daughter die at age 21 in an accident? How could my husband leave me for somebody else, or my wife, take off or shut down emotionally? How could these things happen? How could I go in for my physical and 3 weeks later I'm in surgery fighting for my life? This is the nature of life, that some of these things happen. And so how we deal with it, how we go on. I love, what you guys were all saying before. Ironically, the best way that we go on is not to go on, is to stay in the moment, to allow ourselves the honest experience of what we're going through. I talk about the pillars of courageous living, and one of them is just to be so kindly and brutally honest with ourselves about what we're going through. When we suffer a loss like I've suffered, we've not only suffered the loss of somebody we love, we've also lost the world because we don't know how to fit into it anymore. We fear that we're going to lose the world. We can't go through the la-di-da and the blah blah and we're broken, truly brokenhearted. And we don't understand yet that it's a heart broken open that expands us, that allows us to truly breathe in the way that's been suggested. That allowing and permitting and creating the safety and permission to feel what we're feeling, to go through what we're going through, and to give ourselves that safety, that kindness, that permission, that freedom to say, out of anger, I want to spit in the face of the universe right now. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. My daughter didn't deserve this. How does this all work? I've lost my faith and my beliefs in how this all works. If something like this could happen to somebody so beautiful and somebody so good, get the casting director on the phone. Where do I file my complaints? Get customer service on the phone, because this sucks. And I hate that this is the history of my life, that this is the way it has evolved. And I think it was, for me, Gary, whether it's, saying, my God, closure is the most destructive myth that people can perpetuate. Oh, go get some closure. That people get shut down. The messaging, the subtle messaging to people, like, you're making us all feel very uncomfortable. Your grief is so messy and incomplete. You just need to think more positively or see the bigger picture. Like, I can tell you, she's in a better place. No, she's not in a better place. Her place is here with me. Her place is finishing her life, living out this beautiful blossoming of a human being that I've watched, that I've tendered since she was a little tiny baby that looked like an ET. So the honesty, is so essential, Gary. And, I remember one specific incident where a dad came to me when I started the Jen and Druck Center. He said, look, I'm not coming into your offices. I don't want counseling. I didn't sign up to this BS about grief and grieving. He says, I just want one question answered, People said I should go talk to you. Well, here I am. I have one question. He says, I'm screwed, aren't I? What was he talking about? His daughter had been raped and murdered, getting her best friend out of a domestic violence situation, helping her move out of her apartment to a guy who was brutal and violent. And that night he killed this man's daughter in vengeance. And he said, just answer that question. I'm screwed. And he didn't use the word screwed, by the way. And I looked at him and I said, you are screwed. And for the first time since his daughter had been murdered, this man cracked open with tears. And I held him. And it was the first time he had given himself that he felt safe enough to let it all go. And then I said, before we finished meeting, I said, I want to be honest with you. I've only given you half the truth. He said, what are you talking about? I said, if I told you the other half, you'd have every reason to choke me and throw me to the ground. So let's talk in about a year. He says, I'm not waiting a year. I don't even want to see you again. He says, what the hell's the rest of the truth? And I said, you're not screwed. Paradoxically, you're screwed and you're not screwed. You're going to get to live out the rest of your days, however many they are, by honoring your daughter, your angel daughter who has passed, and your earth daughter who's living just a few miles from here. And that formed into something I call the 7 honorings, which I'm glad to share with you, or people can go to my website and read about. But it's the honesty and the self-compassion, the kindness and the permission to say it how it really is, to feel it how it really is, and to create a safe space and a judgment-free zone with people who are trusted confidants to be able to air it out. And that for me is the most essential and central part of healing after loss, out of becoming grief literate. And I trained psychiatrists at University of California, San Diego Medical School, young psychiatrists. They asked me to teach them grief literacy. And it's so important, because how many people are they going to be seeing who've suffered losses?
Right.
And how are they trained to figure things out and fix them? Figure out and fix, rather than be with, stand with, walk with, listen to, quiet your own mind and your own thoughts. You don't have to fix anybody. Listen to them. Help them think about what their options are. Help them think about the people in their lives they should be spending time with, and those tragedy groupies who they shouldn't be spending time with. To think about what high-grade self-care looks like in the aftermath of a traumatic loss. And I'm not talking about a mani and a pedi. I'm talking about deep self-care, permission, stopping admonishing, stopping trips into the torture chamber of guilt where we irrationally implicate ourselves in the death of a loved one. So these are some essential things.